Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of the Financial Education Fridays. This one here is on a modern day land rush, and this is closely related to the uh, issue from last week, which went over like investor psychology and the stages of the markets. So if you haven't seen that one, you might want to watch it before you watch this. I'm going to give just a brief idea about it, but uh, you'll see where I'm heading. I'll give a brief overview of what I covered last week, but you'll see where I'm heading with that with this week's edition. So let me get to the next slide here so I can do some writing. Okay, let's see here. Find this. Okay, there we go. Now, last week when I was talking about investor psychology and the stages of the market, let me kind of draw something here. Okay, and then do this, and this is a market, right? Now, um, just a quick overview. There was kind of four stages in a market. There was the accumulation phase, all right? Accumulation, which kind of represented this area right in here, up to here, or from this area to this area, okay? Accumulation, right? This is where the strong players, the smart money, um, whenever you're in any kind of market, doesn't matter whether it's stock market, real estate market, antique market, gold, precious metals, commodities, doesn't matter. They all have this kind of same four stages. Um, the accumulation stage is when the smart money is looking to buy low, and then they try to sell high. Okay. Now, that's the accumulation stage. In this stage here, from here to here, okay, this is called the markup. Right? So the strong money has accumulated, and it's basically supply and demand. They own all of the supply, and since they own all of the supply, and there's some kind of triggering event or whatever have you that causes people to begin to want that particular item in the market. Let's just call it stock, okay? Um, that begins to drive the price up. Why? Because the strong hands have the supply, and the weak hands, or the people who want it, they're going to start paying a higher and higher price in order to be able to get shares of it. I mean, think about I talked about silver last week, where silver um, had been uh, is now down to like 15 and a half, $16, and that's kind of like right here in the market phase. So it's beginning the accumulation phase for the strong hands, and when they've accumulated enough, people are going to want, and that's going to start to drive the price up. What ends up happening is the average investor, all right, they'll see some news, and they'll hear on the news, oh, buy gold, buy silver, buy this, buy that, and this the people that the weak money, the not too smart money, they start wanting it, and they're willing to pay the price, and they start getting it right about here, and then the smart money knows kind of like where the top is, and where they decide this is where. Because they understand the fundamentals, they decide that here's where we're going to start to distribute. Let me change the color here. Distribute the stock. In other words, they start selling off their shares in order to take the profit that they made between here and here. Okay, and they're selling it to that general public. Okay, and as they start selling it, that means the supply gets dumped on the market, and the price begins to go down. All right, and that's called the sell-off. All right. Right, where the price starts going down and going down, and the people begin mentally, they begin to panic, and because why they bought it up in here, or over in here, and now the price is down here, and they're like losing their money, and they're saying, I'm losing my money, I'm losing my money. So they kind of start selling, and what ends up happening is down here, okay, right in here, the smart money, the strong money starts to accumulate again, okay, and they start it takes a while. They can't just doesn't happen overnight, but it takes a while for them to accumulate the supply again, and they go right back into another cycle. We saw this with silver. The price of silver had gone up to almost $50, okay, and the smart money started to selling it off, and so we had the sell off, and because the price came down, and now it's bumping down around 15 bucks. Okay, now the price will go up and down and up and down, and this is called a shakeout, where it gives people a little bit of hope. The people who have held on, uh, maybe they had purchased it, say, at $20 here, okay, and they didn't sell up here because they were expecting it to go higher, and they missed selling it this high. Well, now it comes down to 20, and they're disheartened, but they haven't really uh, you know, they're not emotionally wrecked yet, and the price goes down to 15, and now they're like, oh, I'm losing money, I'm losing money, but they're still not willing to sell, and the price will end up going up, and they'll get a little bit happy, and it'll come down again, and they'll get disheartened, and up and down and up and down until they can't stand it anymore, and that's why it's called a shakeout, because they can't take those emotional swings, and eventually they sell out here to the smart money, the smart, investors who are accumulating those shares of stock, or in the case of silver, they're accumulating that silver. So they end up getting more of the supply because all of these weak investors are selling out, and the cycle just goes over again and again. Okay, so that's kind of like just a quick overview of what I spoke about last week. So what does this have to do with this week? Okay, um, you know, in the post there, you're going to see an article, and the title of this was called "The Modern Day Land Rush." And the reason why I'm bringing this up, I just gave you an example of silver on investor psychology and stages of the market. Um, in Holland, they had something called the tulip mania, where people were buying tulips, flowers, and it was just insane. But in the United States, uh, I drive to work and I look out over a valley, and I see these pieces of property where the guy has his name on it. And I'm driving 10 miles, 15 miles, and this guy owns all of this land. And I sit back and I think about how someone could have accumulated so much land, right? And he obviously didn't do it in his lifetime. I mean, it was passed down to him, and that goes back to a time when, like for example, the Louisiana Purchase. The United States had gotten, that big tract of land in the middle of the United States, and they wanted people to populate it, so they basically gave it away for free. They had that land rush. If you watch that movie Far and Away with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, that was, that's what it was all about. Everybody would just line up at a specific time, and you would rush to get this land, and it was yours for free. Obviously, there was Indians, and there were risks and stuff like that, but people accumulated vast stretches of land, um, and they passed it down from generation to generation. So today, when I'm driving down the highway and I see this guy's name is Daniel, and he has, here's a sign, Daniel, Daniel, I mean, this guy owns all of this land, which he has all commercial real estate development on it. This guy, just looking at it, he's a gazillionaire. I mean, he's just wealthy. I mean, it's unreal. But anyway, so I named this the modern day land rush because, today you think, this is never going to happen. I mean, all the land in the entire world has already, been discovered. It's not like it's, we're finding new things, unless of course a new island pops up in the middle of an ocean someplace. But if we look at the United States, um, and I'm just going to draw a crude United States here. Here's the California coast. Here's the East Coast. Here's Florida. Here's Texas, and here's sort of like Canada's up here. And forgive my geography, but here's Detroit, okay? Detroit, Michigan, sort of like smack in the middle of the United States, right? And Detroit, as we all know, that's the car capital of the world. It's where all the, automobile industry is all located for Chevys and Fords and stuff like that. And it's bankrupt, that city, to the point where if you read the article, and the link is in the post, you see that they're foreclosing, okay, on properties. Now I'm going to bounce around here a little bit, so I'm going to go down to the next slide in order to bring this information into more view. Um, you know, they're talking about having starting foreclosure proceedings on 42,000 homes. This year they're going to foreclose on 56,000 homes, and next year they're planning to foreclose on 75,000 homes. And that's 173,000 homes that are going into foreclosure. Now, that doesn't mean that 173,000 are going to go up in the auction, but fully, if they took this year at 56, that 20,000 actually went into foreclosure. I mean, when it went up for auction, that's about 35%. So 35% of these 173,000 homes ends up being 60,000 homes, or 60,000, I shouldn't call them homes, I should call them properties, are going to go into foreclosure up for auction, meaning somebody could buy them. Now, a year or so ago, I had read an article about how a lot of foreign investors are coming to the United States and buying up land and buying up properties. And Detroit is a prime place where they're getting them for $10,000 a piece on the low end. I mean, you're talking about, let's just say on an average $75,000 home, $75,000. They're getting them for 10, right? When things go off at auction, generally the most that they'll be paid for is about 30%. Okay, I mean even 30% of 75 is like 21,000 or so. All right, just roughly guessing here, but it is possible to purchase them for 25% or even as low as 10%. It depends upon the property, but generally at auction 30% is the highest. So these foreign investors have been coming over and buying up these properties at $10,000. Okay, now in reading this here article, a bid was just put up to purchase 6,000 properties, and they're all very close to each other. If you look, there's a PDF document that shows the properties, and they're all right next to each other. And the bid was for $3.2 million. Okay, now this is smart. Okay, I mean, first of all, it's smart to be going and trying to buy up those properties for 10,000 a piece. Okay, but this person is bidding 3.2 million for 6,000 properties, and the article goes on. What are you, insane? Well, when you do the math, you divide the 6,000 by the 3.2 by 6,000. That ends up being about $533 a property versus the 10,000. Okay, that's called buy low. Okay, that's called buy low. 10,000 was buy low. All right, 533 is even more buy low. All right, but the article goes on and says, well, the city itself, when it was getting all of these properties, in order to try to raise the value of the properties, they were planning on just leveling fully 10,000 homes, just bulldozing on under, right, making them all flat, so that no one would want to live there or be there, and that would condense the population. In other words, if this is Detroit and this is where everybody lives, and now all of a sudden I'm going to lop off this portion here, everybody's going to live in here, so supply and demand means that the prices here have to go up, right? Well, Detroit was planning on leveling 10,000 of them, And the politicians can't understand why someone would put in a bid for 3.2 million. And they're not looking, and they're kind of like figuring, well, it's going to take an additional 24 million for them to level um, everything that's there over those 6,000 properties. Well, okay, 24 million, right? Plus 3.2 million is 27 million. Okay, and if we divide the 27 million by the 6,000 properties, that ends up being $4,533 a property. Okay, this person is buying a property for $5,000. Okay, you want a home, go buy go buy a property. Okay, for 10,000 or 5,000. Right now, granted, in the previous slide, I had showed. Let's see here. Sorry, where was it? Yeah, I was talking about how many were. It was this here 60,000. There were 60,000 properties that are going to be actually auctioned off, and this here is only, we're talking about them, this person buying up 6,000. So there's still 54,000 properties that are available. That's buy low. Okay. Now, I'm sitting here in Pennsylvania. Does it make sense for me to go and buy in Detroit? Well, when you sit and you look at this from the city's perspective, they'd be foolish not to take that bid. I mean, sure, they're wanting to try to get 10,000, okay, or more, right? Depending upon whether they're paying at auction 30%, 25, 10%. They're looking to try to get around $10,000 for a property. But it would be foolish for the city to not accept that bid, okay, of 3.2 million. Remember, 3.2 million, the city's only getting $533, right? The cost to the investor, once they level it, is $4,500. But for the city at $533 versus 10,000, they kind of like, well, why would I want to do that? And they can't seem to understand that, but they're forgetting a simple fact: property taxes. Okay, the person who buys these 6,000 units will probably end up paying property taxes. That's money into the city's coffer, and we know that the cities do not use property taxes for what they're supposed to use. Some of it gets there, but a lot of it gets used for other things. So basically, it's just money into a till to be used for whatever they want. But over the course of time, every year, they're going to collect property taxes on those 6,000 units. So for the city, it makes sense for them to accept that bid. That person who gets those 6,000 properties at $4,500, once they bulldoze it all under, they're getting a steal. I mean, 10,000 is a steal. Go to Detroit if you've got 10,000. Why? Because you're buying low. Let's go back to our original graph here. This is accumulation, buying low. Okay, at 10,000, you say, okay, I'm buying at 10,000. How much is those properties worth? Eventually they'll be worth a hell of a lot more. The question is when. And when you look at people who have bought lots of land and it's all just sitting there, and they're sitting on all this wealth as the property goes up, okay, over the course of time. Sure, they're passing it down from generation to generation. And it might, like me, I'm 55, and if I buy at 10,000, it's not going to do me any good unless something drastic happens over the next 10 or 20 years. But if I pass it down to my kids and they pass it down to their kids, they're going to eventually be wealthy because it's just the cycle of the markets. Right now, Detroit is in an accumulation phase. And it will, turn around and go up at some point in time. And you can say, well, why is that? Well, think about this. This is Detroit, okay, right here, right in the middle. I mean, Why would all of those automotive giants have gone to Detroit and built their automobile factories way back when? Okay, because it made a lot of sense. It sits in the middle of the United States, easy for distribution throughout the United States and Canada. Okay, uh, so there's already transportation systems such as trains and planes. Okay, um, just because the city isn't being run the right way by the government doesn't mean that the city doesn't have intrinsic value, those things that are hidden that you don't see. So this guy who's buying up those 6,000 properties, all right, and he levels them, think about this. Um, Walmart needs a distribution center. Amazon needs a distribution center. Build a big building, you know, you know, rent it to them. Okay, turn it around and make it into a farm. I mean, you're sitting here and you're saying, okay, well, here's land, and it's all concrete. There's roads and stuff like this. Well, you can convert that into a building. And when I say farm, think along the lines of hydroponics, farming with water. You don't need dirt and soil. All you need is just space. And, when you're doing farming, not only are you working on the ground level, but using hydroponics, you can also build up. You're not limited to, how much land you have. You can also go up. So the person who, is buying this property, these 6,000 properties, it might seem like a bad idea. Why would somebody go and do that? But I can give you an awful lot of reasons here, and as I've just shown, why it's a smart investment by that person. Um, if you have extra cash and you're wondering where to put it, yesterday I was listening to a guy who played poker and made a lot of money playing poker, and he stopped playing poker and decided he wanted to invest in the stock market, and he came right out and said, it's just like almost impossible for an individual investor to make money in the stock market. Um, the only way you possibly could is by doing the buy and hold strategy. But if you're going to be day trading or anything like that, you're just killing yourself. He said, he was losing his money, and he said it's not that he couldn't learn it. He said the amount of time it would take for him to learn how to work the stock market, he would be able to play poker, because you do have to constantly work at your skills in poker. So he decided to go back to poker and left the stock market behind. You know, um, I agree, think buy and hold, but there's not just one, market out there. I mean, I talk about silver all the time, and you see them in my posts. Right now it's in an accumulation phase. Um, after it had just come off of a sell-off. Here's this land in Detroit. Okay, this is an accumulation, right? And there's a lot of other things that are out there. I mean, I talked about antiques. Um, they're in an accumulation phase now also. So take all of this for what it is. Realize that this here is the modern day land rush. This is what it looks like. You can go to, if you've got 100,000 and you're not happy with it sitting in the bank, and you can afford property taxes, maybe it makes sense for you to go and, buy up, 10 properties over in Detroit and let it sit there, with the idea that, you'll either find a use for it when the city starts turning around, or you'll pass it along to your kids and teach your kids how to do the same thing, right? Today's modern day land rush happens to be sitting right in Detroit. So I hope you like this post, and see you next week with something else. Okay. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, be sure to post a comment there. I don't mind talking about it. All right. Thanks and have a great day.